Yo, Zed Run community, welcome back to another episode. I appreciate you stopping in and thank you so much for the continued support. The likes, the subscriptions, the comments in Reddit, the Twitter followers. Appreciate it. Real quick, I'm actually putting all my post edits at the beginning because I don't feel like sliding them all in, and I have a few notes that I've taken since recording, since doing most of the editing. I've been around the community listening to things, as well as just giving more thought to some of the commentary after I listen to it. So here's a quick rundown of things that may come up later on. So the first thing that I wanted to add it as a post edit is a blog and a website that I was unfamiliar with when I created it, and have since found out. The expected value breeding theory, as you can see behind me, was introduced to me by, and I think created, at least in part, by G. Wiener through the Discord. Thank you so much for reaching out. I recommend everybody take a read through this. I'm going to leave a link in the comments below to it. It's very much along the same lines as the video I put out a few weeks ago about how to go about finding a winning horse, although they do a much better job of making it clean, giving some formulas to work with, and presenting it in a nice written manner. If you watch my video, my stuff's a little bit more loose. I don't get into going into heavy math, which maybe I should, but hey, here we are. Again, this is a great read and a pretty solid way to go about it, in my personal opinion, and it reflects a lot of the thoughts that I've had. And continuing with that thought, it's been interesting going into the Discords and hearing various conversations that are right along the same lines as what I'm thinking and what I have to present here. Mind you, mine is a little bit different, but not by much. Honestly, I think the community as a whole is running these same thoughts right now. One of the segments later, I talk about the history of gaming and being able to sell items and so forth. I don't think I gave enough credit to some of the history of TF2 hats, CS2 skins, pets in World of Warcraft. There's been a lot of different items and things like this throughout history of gaming, but I don't think we've seen it in such an integrated fashion and such a way that we are now with blockchain gaming. I think it is a new genre, even if it is building upon a lot of former lessons and understandings. In the section that I talk about a pendulum effect between the availability and the floor versus the amount of options and places for the horses to be run, I left out marketing and player acquisition. I think those are obvious that are going to push the pendulum as well. In the little section that I go into about bloodlines and the impact of them in the racing algorithm and the long-term ideas of potentially of pay-to-win systems, I was so happy to find out on Twitter this article. Congrats. I hope the horse makes the qualifying, and I hope there's other stories about this where people went out and bought a cheap floor and are actually going to be able to qualify into this tournament. It would be fantastic to hear about some new stables who were able to pull that off, maybe even get some funding out of the first round qualify. I don't know how they're going to break up all the money, but hopefully they do that and give out to all the qualifiers something, get new stables going. That would be amazing to hear. So I'm optimistic on that. So there you go, just a few quick post edits, things that I wanted to mention, and I didn't really want to slide in there. I've already done enough editing on this thing. I love you guys. Hope you have a great week. See you out there on the track. Cheers. For documentation purposes, today's date is October 23rd, and the price of Ethereum is approximately 4,135 to USD. So the thing that I've been pondering is regarding the value perspective of converting Ethereum into an NFT. As we have watched our Zed Run market prices and floor prices continue to go down on the average, we've also been watching the Ethereum to fiat price continue to rise. So it seems that I cannot be the only one who is sitting here trying to justify moving an asset that is appreciating into an asset that is depreciating. Now I get it. The big picture. Look at the long term. Will these assets actually appreciate over time? Let's be honest. The value of the item that you purchase is only as valuable as the amount that somebody else will give you for it. When we're discussing items that are being bought and sold with a currency whose value is changing dynamically, often, and by very large margins, there you take a lot of faith in speculation in converting that asset into another asset, which is also going to change value over time. And if you're here simply for investment purposes only, this has got to be a time where we're really considering throwing on the brakes and understanding where the heck we're going to be and how we liquidate and get our cash back at some point. Of course, this is a very new paradox for gaming as a whole. In the past, we never really had the opportunity to resell it. Perhaps if you were into a game such as Magic the Gathering, you may have a secondary market. Physical board games also have secondary markets, but it's limited. As far as digital games, that ended pretty hard in the 90s when items started showing up on eBay for EverQuest, and IP and all these things started to be debated very hardcore, and it was killed. We're back to this 20 years later. But now we have to understand the new dynamics and how to go about it and how value will be assessed and gained and lost over time. The reason that I want to discuss the value of Ethereum to start is because of the fact that it oftentimes feels like poker chips or in a casino where you come in and you exchange your fiat money for these tokens. You can go out and play with them and you don't think about it at all until the end of the night when you're ready to go back and get your fiat back. So in order to play Zed Run, you need a horse. This is the equivalent of a copy of the game or a character slot, however you wish to think about it. Now, one of the features of the game is that you can breed your horses. You can take, if you have a female horse, you can go out to the stud farm, find a stud, pay the owner of that stud a stud fee, and have your horse create a new NFT. In order to do that, you are converting your Ethereum into an NFT, as well as you're rolling the dice and paying for another character slot in the game. The fact that it's very early in this industry means it's very, very difficult to understand the long-term opportunity costs involved. To do a very quick recap of the Zed Run structure as it is today. In today's environment, the cost of breeding is primarily 80% set by the bloodline of the horses. 20% is the breed type. There is a 165% difference in cost between the Buterin and the Nakamoto as far as bloodline, and there's a 120% range in between Pacer and Genesis. Needless to say, that is a very, very wide margin, and the expectations of the product that would be a result of that should reasonably be scaled to the cost. The problem with that is that we don't understand exactly what to expect, and a lot of people are unable to recoup any of their value in any way, and the long-term perspective is completely uncertain for many reasons, nonetheless being the inclusion of weather at some point, which was changed the way races and outcomes happen. The fact that the Zed Run team has come out and stated that they are building an entire department focused strictly on breeding, another department strictly on racing. Needless to say, the game is going to be changing a lot. There's a lot more classes and tournaments and opportunities for horses to run and hopefully be able to recoup some of the return on investment for the character slot in the first place. But as of right now, we don't know exactly where it is, and when we're looking at the opportunity cost, we have to weigh the value of the NFT versus the prospective value of Ethereum. Of course, as Ethereum goes up or down, that changes. So that brings us to what abilities are being passed down from the breeding algorithm, what is happening now, and what changes can be expected. How is weather going to implement it? How is our stats going to change as the racing algorithm is adjusted in the future? Is there breeding changes? Is there breeding price changes? Most importantly to this discussion, price changes. What is the mental stake and the mental value price of each horse as it comes out and as it lives its lifespan in the game? Now, a big part of the understanding of when the analysis is being done is all based on who is being bred right now. And let's be honest, not too many people are breeding losing horses together to see if they can create a winning horse. Mainly because when we're breeding winning horses together, the chances of getting a horse that is greater than the parents is very slim. So to expect the same to happen from lower quality horses is even crazier. At the cost that they are set at now, there is very limited room for experimentation. So who really knows? But we do know that you have to be very, very wealthy in order to just experiment and try to crack the nut in the first place in that regard. So where does that leave us? In my opinion, right between a rock and a hard place. You have a problem here with a very loyal fan base investing a large quantity of money into a product that is a beta. So the first part about this is that it complicates it, as we said, is that each horse has a base cost. Leaving the horse as an unraced and an open character slot allows the purchaser to be able to speculate. But let's face it, based on the current breeding algorithm, if other children are then purchased and raised and shown to be not high quality, the unraced one is also going down in value at the same time. The next complication that we're dealing with is market saturation. The real reason for this is widely acknowledged as the inability for a floor priced and a lower quality Z rank, bloodline, and breed type to be able to race profitably in the system. There's a lack of classes, there's a lack of tournaments and so forth. There's a lot of opportunity ahead of us for these things to come about, and who knows where the value will be of the horses that are being bred now. The fact that they have a minimum cost kind of locks these in as a minimum required return on investment down the line at some point or other. They need to have a certain base value in order to be worth the minting cost in the first place. That said, not everybody agrees with this. Some people do believe that there should be losers in the game, and I'm not really sure how I stand on it. The more I play, the more I understand it. Also, the more I understand gaming and so forth, that's not something that's going to help a game be successful in the long run. So now going back to where we were started with the cost of Ethereum creates a sliding scale. The higher the Ethereum cost, the higher the rate of return that is going to be needed, and the lower the expected Ethereum to be reacquired for sale. For example, if Ethereum to USD is at 20,000, do we really expect people to be paying 0.25 or 5,000 for what you would be seeing in a 0.25 horse right now? Or would you expect the value of the horses to stay equivalent to the USD? Now we have a serious problem because the value of Ethereum is going up and the value of the NFT is going down. Consequently, a lot of people do believe this is a hedge in the opposite direction. There's many people that believe the price of Ethereum will eventually go down very far. There'll be another crypto winter, in which case these NFTs are going to be a hedge against that. It's another line of thinking, and it may or may not be valid. Time will tell. So, in my personal opinion, the root cause of all of this goes back to the idea of protecting rarity and bloodlines. I'm not sure if it has been controversial in the past. I'd be willing to say it's not, because it seems so evident. You price things just like the real world. The slower cars are one price, the more expensive cars are usually faster. In this game and in many of the games that I've researched that are similar, the same thing is being done, where you'll have degradation of quality and potential over the bloodlines from the highest value down to the lowest value. Now, to split this up into a few pros and cons, here's the pro side. For one, it protects the early investors and the people who supported the game at the beginning. In most cases, these will be the ones who end up with the least opportunity cost as well as the highest value on return if the game is successful. The other thing about it is that it protects the floor prices in theory. This is, as I would expect, right up until the point of critical failure, in which case people will stop breeding altogether and just try to exit out however they can. I'm not saying this is happening or going to happen. I'm not predicting this by any means, but I'm just saying if there is ever a break point, that people will be willing a loss on their investment just to recoup what they can and move on to the next thing. From a cons perspective, in my opinion, is that the way the breeding algorithm works out in either direction, whether the child is on average going to be faster or on average going to be slower, is a major hindrance for the game as a whole, because where you start and where you're going is sort of counterproductive, and you're going to burn one side or the other. And worst of all, in my opinion, by doing this, you are creating a systemic system where it is very, very pay to win. As we see in the statistics right now, the highest priced horses on average have the greatest opportunity to create the highest revenue in return. That is pay to win. When you can spend more and have greater results than you are paying to win. Sadly, as I do research into other projects, I'm seeing this a lot more in a lot of things. I'm not sure how it's going to be avoidable, to be honest with you. In the current structure, I just don't understand where we're going to go with this, so that is not pay to win. Or whether pay to win would just become an acceptable thing, and it's more so of a speed and a duration thing. The less you pay to enter, the longer it's going to take you to win and the lower chance. Now, thankfully, there are plenty of Buterin and low-cost horses that are performing very well. But from what I understand, the equation to get to them has been expensive, and there is a lot of losing propositions along the way in taking the chance and the risk at those cards. Although it's less money in the upfront, there's also a lot less winners being produced, and the chance of return is harder. So if these are considered to be issues, if people and or the development team agree with me as these are issues that are going to be needed to be addressed, then the question is, what do we do? In my brainstorming, I've come up with a whole bunch of ideas, and they all have some sticky spots. So I'll give you a real quick rundown of some of the ideas that I think could happen, and I don't know. This is the rock in a hard place idea. So the first thing would be just to simply remove minimum fees and let the market drive prices as a whole. Obviously, if we do this, there's going to be a boatload of Nakamotos, and the bloodlines will just evaporate. And that said, if they were to update the algorithm, then maybe we would see a more spread across the bloodlines and more people doing some experimentation at a lower cost. And of course, as we said, the con for this is that it would impact the early investors, and quite literally every single person who has done a breeding and paid a breeding fee since it's been available may feel a bit of salty about this. Their investment, the horses that they got, have a set fee. Comparable horses, potentially better horses, are going to be created with a lower fees, and that just creates a very uneasy feeling. Another possibility would be to make a max number of breeds per mare or stallion. That would require a line in the stand and potentially some grandfathering in to make that happen. Of course, they can change the breeding algorithm. How that's communicated and gone about would be really challenging, but could help or hurt. Of course, how that's done in conjunction with the breeding prices, whether they stay the same or change, throws a whole bit of salt and pepper into the conversation. Major changes to the racing algorithm would invalidate all of the statistical history, the reasons for a lot of people making a lot of valued purchases, and could definitely drive a huge wedge into the community. On that note, though, if the algorithm were to change so that they added aging and or some sort of variable that hasn't been computed yet and that nobody has been impacted yet, and they do it before the line, then it would be potentially a smoother transition and a get out of jail free card, and a way to adapt towards the future. So one potential opportunity for this would be the staking option and the use of tokenomics. Although this goes back to the idea of a glue factory, I believe it would make it so that horses stay within the ecosystem for a minimum amount of time. For example, 1 year after the breeding has happened and the horse has been born, it becomes eligible to send to the glue factory. In return for the horse, the owner would get a certain percentage of the breeding costs minus the stud fee and minus the profit in return. This essentially protects the horses that were never ever able to do anything, and you'll be able to get the initial mare's value or some percent of the mare's value breeding costs back. By doing this, we're then increasing the holding value of the token, reducing the supply of horses, and further reinvesting into the game. So the most noble thing may actually be is to simply take a pause, stop breeding for a little while, introduce the new teams, the racing team, the breeding team, the tokenomics team, implement some of these things, and then reopen up breeding once we have a better idea of what to expect and how the costs will be determined moving forward, as well as how the horses that have currently been bred will be impacted by the new changes and what we can expect from their future breeding habits. So in conclusion, I'm not really sure how I feel about breeding right now. I'm really nervous about the future, how the changes are going to be implemented, whether the minimum floor price will actually go a lot further for one reason or the other, whether it'll ever come up above where it is. I just don't know. I'm optimistic. I know the team's listening. They're making changes. I'm really, really optimistic for the future of this game, but I have no idea where the money is actually going to come from as far as return on investment. When it comes to play to earn, what are we going to be playing and how are we going to be earning it? How quickly, frequently, how much time investment or future monetary investment is needed to get a return on the initial investment? I don't know, and it's really nerve-wracking. As I said before, I'm still nervous about how weather is going to be implemented. The sooner, the better, in my opinion. But my question to you, finally, at the end of this, what do you think? Do you think that breeding is a losing proposition right now? Do you think that it doesn't matter because we're so early, we're in the first 100,000, 200,000 horses, and that eventually this game is going to have 10 million, 20 million horses? So horses that are being bred right now are going to have a low ID number and have an intrinsic value in that regard, just because of the fact that they were bred within the first year or two that the game was around. Who knows? These are very speculative, and I would imagine it depends on how you are managing your investments, your time, as well as your long-term vision for the game and how you believe that it can go. So there you go, folks. Thank you so much for watching it this far. As of right now, there's 40 minutes recorded. I don't know how much we're going to cut this down to, but hopefully wherever I ended up, it was worth it for you. I hate to waste your time. Thank you so much. If you made it this far, it couldn't have been that bad. If you haven't done so, please hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, leave some comments. I love you all. Have a great day, and I'll see you out there on the track. Peace.